Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Space Cadets for Harris. Our mission is to protect our home planet, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life, to boldly go where no woman has gone before, to elect Kamala Harris, the next president of the United States. First of all, I want to thank all the incredible speakers who have agreed to be on tonight. If this was a Star Trek film cast, we'd be certain to win an Oscar. Also, thanks to all the volunteers who have made all of the technical support possible to get us here tonight. My name is John Grunsfeld. I'm a planetary scientist, astronomer, former NASA astronaut, former NASA chief scientist, and former associate administrator for science at NASA. And yes, NASA Legal made me say all those formers. I'm also a very long-time fan of Star Trek, and I hear so is Kamala Harris. I'm so excited to support the Harris-Waltz team, and I hope you are too. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and from as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a scientist. When Star Trek was first on, we had one television, and my parents wouldn't allow me to watch it because, well, it was about adult themes. While a science fiction show, it addressed issues of the time, such as race, gender, freedom, sexuality, addiction, democracy, autocracy, and more. Who could have imagined those would still be so relevant today, and that the modern Star Trek would still be grappling with those same issues? As a 12-year-old, I would role-play Star Trek with my friends and look up at the night sky and wonder if there's anyone there on other worlds. And of course, it won't surprise you to know that I role-played Mr. Spock. During middle school, I discovered science fiction and read all the sci-fi in my school's library. And if things don't go well in November, I suspect most of those books will be banned. In high school, I became more fascinated with physics and astronomy and decided that's what I would do for a career. I just assumed, since I was pretty young then, that by the time I was an adult, everyone would go to space. And so in my college applications, I wrote that I wanted to be the chief scientist on an orbiting space station. What a great country we live in, that a kid from the south side of Chicago can dream big, become an astronaut, fly 5 space shuttle missions to space, 3 times to service the Hubble Space Telescope, which, by the way, President Obama called me the Hubble repairman. And on my last shuttle flight, we had bad weather in Florida and had to stay an extra 2 days in space. Oh, darn. But Houston was able to beam up the 2009 Star Trek movie to us. And so we sat in the middeck and was able to watch that film while orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. It is in that spirit that a young woman born in Oakland, California to immigrant parents could become an attorney, a US senator, and advance to become the vice president of the United States, and now our next president of the United States. Space science and exploration provides us a unique view of the universe and delivers to us, through the work of scientists in the US and around the world, a sense of wonder and awe about the world we live in. The world is not without some significant challenges, such as human-induced climate change, but I am hopeful and optimistic with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on the job to win in November and lead us to a brighter future. Our job tonight and for the next 81 days is to work hard to make sure that happens. The alternative is just too bleak to imagine. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to my colleague and friend, United States Marine Corps Major General, a pilot who flew more than 100 combat missions in the A-6, a test pilot, a 4-time NASA Space Shuttle astronaut, including as pilot on the Hubble Space Telescope deployment mission, and the 12th administrator of NASA, Charlie Bolden. And I'll just add that Charlie Bolden's picture hangs on the wall of my nephew, Sam Grunsfeld, United States Marine Corps Corporal Sam Grunsfeld. Over to you, Charlie.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks for the opportunity to participate tonight, and thanks to everybody joining. People like John who know me know I don't normally do this, so for those of you who are wondering why I'm here, perhaps I could start by saying why in the world am I here tonight? I'm a career Marine. I spent 34 years on active duty in the Marine Corps, and John already talked about the fact that 2014 of those years, in the middle of my career, I was detailed to NASA as an astronaut, and then after my Marine Corps career, had the privilege of coming back to NASA again for the 2 terms of the Obama administration as the NASA administrator. One of the things I learned as a general officer in the Marine Corps and also as the NASA administrator was stay out of politics. And that's what I've endeavored to do throughout my entire life, to be quite honest. I have shied away from speaking on behalf of candidates, but this is not an ordinary time. I have known about Vice President Harris for many, many, many years as a person who spent the last 9 years of my Marine Corps career stationed in El Toro in Orange County and Miramar down in San Diego. I had an opportunity to watch her rise to become a United States Senator from the state of California. And I have always been impressed for her. I was among those who was really disappointed when she dropped out of the 2020 Democratic presidential campaign, because I was really hoping that since Hillary Clinton did not become the first woman to be president of the United States, that perhaps Kamala Harris would have an opportunity to step into that place. So I believe, much like John has said, this is a critically important time for us as a nation. What can we do? First of all, I'm a person who I never tell people for whom they should vote. I don't even try to convince somebody that they should vote for a particular person, but I do emphasize to them the critical importance of voting, and I generally will engage someone in conversation to ask them if they're willing to talk about it, to tell me what it is that they believe and why they believe it. And then in response to that, I'll give them my beliefs and why I believe that. But I think that if we're able to engage with people that we meet on the streets and talk to them about the 2 candidates in this race, present our position on why we think they're best. Vice President Harris, having been a part of one of the most productive administrations in the history of the country, when you really look at it, a person who is passionate about this nation, patriotic about this nation, who, as John said, loves space and everything about space, which really excites me, has served her first term as the chairman of the National Space Council, overseeing both civil and military space and trying to get us to the point where we're all coordinated. Those are just a few of the reasons why I think she is the best person to become president of the United States. What can we do? The biggest thing we can do is bring other people to the table. We can talk to our families. We can talk to our friends. I know for most of you, I'm preaching to the choir, but there may be some of you who like me, sometimes sit back and wonder, what in the world can I do? That's among the things that we can all do, is to bring other people in to understand why this vote is important. If you're like me and you have grandchildren, I am very fortunate in that I have 3 beautiful granddaughters. The baby of those is on her way to Penn State, and the last 3 days, all we've talked about is the importance of they're already registered to vote, but the importance of their going out and voting and taking their friends along with them. We're in the process right now of trying to recruit the Howard University women's varsity soccer team, because my middle granddaughter is a player there, and she's all excited and fired up about helping us to get soon to be President Harris elected. And so those are some of the kinds of things that we can do. Go get those people who frequently do not vote because they're skeptical about our government, or they don't think their vote is going to count. Every single vote is going to count. What must we do? And I'll close with that. We have to take action to make sure that everyone knows why it's important to vote, why we believe that Vice President Harris is the most important candidate to come down the path in quite a while, that she can help us to really move this country to even greater heights. We live in the greatest country on the face of the planet. President Biden, I love it because he always likes to say, we are the United States of America, and there's nothing we can't do if we do it together. There are so many more great things that we can do, but we've got to have a forward-looking, future-looking president like President Kamala Harris. So, John, thanks again for the opportunity to be here. If anybody wants to talk to me ever about why I believe what I believe, and oh, by the way, there is life elsewhere in the universe. So I am convinced. I just haven't, John and I haven't found it yet, but we're in a quest to do that. And I think with President Harris in office, we may get closer to really being able to prove that for those of you who are like me and believe it. Thanks so much. God bless America and God bless our troops.
Charlie, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on. And I will just add that in the Biden-Harris administration, NASA has just started a few weeks ago the Habitable Worlds Observatory, which is the first NASA telescope specifically designed to look for life on Earth-like planets around nearby stars. Now it's just starting, and as you know, the great observatories like Hubble, they take about 15 years or more to build. So we're just getting started, but I share your view. Our next guest hardly needs an introduction. Renowned science educator and television personality, Bill Nye, the Science Guy. He is a passionate advocate for science, space exploration, and combating human-induced climate change, or at least informing people. About 30 years ago, I convinced him to apply for the astronaut corps, and I think he would have made a terrific NASA astronaut. And he still might have a chance to go to space. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Dr. Grunsfeld. I applied 4 times. Everybody understand, I know several people on this call are astronauts. Just understand what's involved. They show up with a clipboard. How many PhDs do you have? And the first box is 100 to 300. No, these people are such overachievers. I have tremendous respect. I cannot say enough. But everybody, I am a mechanical engineer. I mean, I'm human, but I'm a mechanical engineer, professional engineer. My first job was on 747s at Boeing. I was a consultant to the Department of Justice for a while on a fighter plane and this and that. But perhaps more importantly, one of my high school college visits was to Starfleet Academy, which was the first Star Trek convention in 1973 in Manhattan. So I'm not saying this is a credential, but I was there. Now, with that in mind, this is the most important election in my lifetime. When I was in high school and then college, there was a big concern when the President of the United States resigned. That was a big deal, but it was nothing compared to what's going on these days. And what I like to remind people that in the US Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8. So Article 1 is the role of Congress. Section 8 is what I describe as miscellany, the Postal Service, and patents and trademarks. And in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, it refers to the progress of science. That's the United States government's job. That's Congress's job, is to promote the progress of science. And to be on this call with the Space Cadets is remarkable, because I will claim that NASA is the best brand the United States has. Around the world, everyone respects NASA and everyone respects NASA's science. And then along that line, Star Trek, in all its manifestations, all its franchises, is a celebration of the optimistic view of the future with science. Now, the other side is about pessimism. They're about how things are bad, about how our future is bleak. But that is just not, if I may, the United States' way. We are optimistic about the future, and we embrace science so that we can make the future better for all of us. And when you have the planetary perspective that astronauts like Dr. Grunsfeld and Dr. Bolden have, you get this appreciation that of the idea that Earth is our home and there's no place to go. We are all in this together. And the thing that's changed since I was a kid is we are now in charge. Humankind is now in charge of this planet, of the whole planet. We didn't want this gig, we didn't want this job, but everything that each of us does affects everybody in the world because we all share the air. Now, the other thing that happens here on Earth is the United States, for better or for worse, is enormously influential. We export our culture to everyone in the world. And so by having an embrace of science and an optimistic view of the future, we will, dare I say it, change the world. Now, if the other side wins, the world's going to be worse for everybody. If not only will science be suppressed the way it was during the pandemic, and the way it is whenever anybody in the government tries to write about climate change, everybody in the world will suffer. My claim is the United States has to lead. And people say to me, Bill, Nye, Science Guy, what can I do about climate change? Two things. First is talk about it. If we were talking about this election and the importance of climate change in this election, the way we're talking about many, many other important ideas, important topics, we'd be doing something about it. And the second thing, everybody, is vote. You have to vote. And if you're not optimistic about the future, just sit down because you won't get anything done. You have to be optimistic. Everybody who competed in the recent Olympics thought he or she was going to win. That's why they were there. We can do this, everybody, but it's going to take all of us working together. So another thing to keep in mind when we're talking about space, the other side in the previous administration was very good with certain aspects of NASA. Their policies were not all bad, but overall, of course, their policies could be disastrous for the future of the United States and for the future of humankind. So everybody, let's work together. Let's embrace science and the progress of science and useful arts, which to me is 18th century expression for engineering, using science to make stuff. And then working together, we can, dare I say it, change the world. Back to you, Dr. Grunsfeld.
Bill, thank you very much. And I totally agree. This election is our opportunity to change the world for the better. And I think from the other side, we already know that they've talked about firing scientists at NOAA, at U.S. Department of Agriculture, at U.S. Geological Survey, at the Food and Drug Administration. You know, they want to take the science and the brutal honesty out of.
They want to fire everybody at NOAA until they try to watch the Weather Channel. There's no information there. It's just
so our job is to prevent that from happening.
Yes, we can do this, everybody.
Yep. Our next guest is Camille Alleyne. Some of you may know her as the Galactic Gal. She's an engineer turned science communicator. She is a star of Instagram and YouTube. She uses her platform to educate and engage a broad audience on topics of space exploration and STEM, bringing space down to Earth. She is one of our key volunteers who made this incredible event happen tonight. Please give a virtual hand to Camille Alleyne.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so I have to admit, I think I am the youngest speaker on this call, which is one, pretty cool, but also two, really nerve-wracking, especially to have to go after Bill Nye, who I grew up watching in all my science classrooms. But when I got the call from John last week asking me to support this, I was like, absolutely, I'm in. You know, I think as, a very prominent figure on social media, it's easy at times to say, I'm not going to engage in that. Like, you know, it's hard for, to post about it and not get a lot of hate for it in this day and age. And a lot of times, it's just something we don't really want to deal with. And so Charlie, I really resonated with what you were saying, just to stay out of it. But, as Gen Z, like I'm the original, 1997, that age baby, zillennial, it's so important for especially our generation to really get active. And, as Bill was saying, it's easy to get discouraged, but I think when you're discouraged, we have so much power behind calls like these and everything going on right now to really make a change in this world. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got into space and, quickly just why I think that investing in space exploration and, in supporting Kamala is really important to me. So I was born and raised in rural Appalachia in a town in North Carolina called Boone. And as you can imagine, especially at that time in the early 2000s, there really wasn't a lot of access to STEM and definitely no access to the space industry. So the only reason I got access to it and really even started to see myself in this industry is because my dad's job moved us to Florida for about 1.5 years when I was 4. So I was really young. And I got to see a space shuttle launch. I will admit we were in St. Petersburg, total other side of the peninsula, but you can still see it. And I was just so enamored that humans had built this thing and come together to build this thing that was sending other humans to space. And I said, I'm going to be an astronaut right then and there. But then quickly after that, we moved back to Boone, North Carolina. And again, little access to STEM education. And also, being a young girl who is kind of nerdy, kind of geeky, likes space and science, really good at math, it's not exactly the most popular thing to be. And that was really hard for me, to be honest with you. I'm an only child, so that social interaction at school was really, really important to me. And getting teased and mocked and everything was really hard and not something I really wanted to deal with. And so, I kind of suppressed my love of space. And I'm actually going to expose myself here. And I've never told anyone this. And I honestly feel if I'm going to tell anyone this, it's going to be in a room full of incredible Star Trek actors. But my parents love Star Trek, like posters all over the house, watched everything, right? It was on all the time. And I was always so embarrassed that I never wanted to watch it. And especially as a little kid, I would throw a fit. And I'm like, I'm not watching that. And the same thing that I would say to my dad when he said I'd make a great engineer, I would just say, no, Dad, that's for boys. And I legitimately thought that. And, of course, now I know how absolutely ridiculous that sounds. But back then, of course, I didn't know that. All I knew was I wanted to be the popular kid, right? I wanted to be fun and liked and have friends. And couldn't find the people that were friends and liked Star Trek and things like that. So when I started posting on social media about space, it was all for, 4-year-old Camille to see, hey, there's somebody like me out there talking about the things that I like and showing representation. And that's one of the reasons that, I think that investing in space is so important, because not only is it inspirational, but, of course, this is something that I learned a lot more as I got into the industry, as I did work in the industry before doing this full time, is that space is so critical to literally every aspect of life on Earth. And, it's not only that inspiration of going to the moon and Mars, but it's helping humanity advance here on Earth. Everything from climate change and weather prediction, as Bill was just saying, watching, the Weather Channel and figuring out if there's going to be a tornado in Dallas tomorrow, right? GPS, the financial system, I mean, even all the tech spinoffs, right? I think a lot of us know this. But space it's not, like I said, it's not just about inspiring people. It's not just about, thinking about where we go in the stars, but it's so fundamental to advancing humanity, both on and off Earth. And I think it's so important to just rally behind something like that. And in terms of supporting Kamala Harris for president, again, everything I said at the beginning with being Gen Z and really wanting this world to improve and not go backwards, I want everyone to think about rallying and supporting, people, things, projects, beliefs, etc., that push us, launch us into the next frontier and not bring us backwards. So with that, I'll hand it back over to John. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Camille.
Bill Nye is clapping for me.
We're going to have a small change and swap the next 2 speakers. And with apologies to Tim Waltz, I would like to do a very brief introduction to the best governor in the United States, Governor Jared Polis. He's beloved here in Boulder, Colorado. Colorado, of course, is the second largest space economy in the country. And I'm just going to hand it right over to you, Governor Polis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to get to Kamala Harris in a moment, but I want to talk about how exciting it is to be on a call with some of my Star Trek heroes and our real life astronaut heroes. Of course, some of you, we're huge Trekkies in our family. So we know, of course, Jerry Ryan's brief play in politics as president of the Confederation of Earth in Picard. So maybe you could share her own political experiences. But in some ways, I feel we're at one of those branch out points. Like Picard would come back to this point to make sure we elect Kamala Harris and not the other guy. This is like where we're going. We're either going to be the Federation or we're going to be the Confederation of Earth, and all that entails. And of course, Robert Picardo, great to see you. The doctor with no name. Although I have to say this, my husband Marlon and I were both, a gay couple in our late 40s. So we sit around watching Golden Girls. And of course, Robert remembers this, season 1, episode 18, he does have a name, Dr. Riess. So there he is. He actually plays the doctor, Dr. Ravel. We were shocked because not only is, it's a doctor, we're like, that's the doctor. That is the doctor. So I hope that this doctor typecasting hasn't hurt your career, Robert. Maybe you can comment on that. But you were excellent in Golden Girls, and of course, even better as the doctor, Nay Schweitzer, whatever it might be. And of course, it's great to be here. Colorado is the home of Space Command. I want to add that this is something that Donald Trump played politics with, right? His decision process around Space Command was based on who he liked, who his buddy was. This is critical for military preparedness. The siting decision was made for Colorado Springs, where it has been, where we have the space ecosystem to support the national defense mission. It's also a key part of our commercial space infrastructure. Some of you probably who aren't fortunate enough to live here have been to Colorado to our space symposium, the largest industry trade conference in Colorado Springs area here. I've been many years there as a congressman as well as a governor. And we were excited that the Biden administration, the U.S. military looked at the facts and they said, of course, for military preparedness, for readiness, for the mission, we are going to continue the commitment in Colorado. We worry, of course, about science being co-opted by politics if we don't win this race. Kamala Harris is somebody that believes in science, supports science, and that is not only science for science sake, it's information and data informed decision making about everything that matters for our country versus, of course, an unknown black box of decision making based on revenge and personal vendettas and whatever bizarre things spew from his mouth. And those are, you can listen to his press conference today. I mean, it's a series of who's aggrieved him, right? I mean, it's not any meaningful process about how to govern a country, how to prosper, how to promote peace and stability in the world. So I'm excited for many reasons, of course, to support Kamala Harris. She's going to be an incredible president of the United States. You mentioned my colleague, Tim Walz. I was so glad to see that she chose somebody who was a dear friend of mine in Congress and as a governor, but as somebody who get things done. 24 years experience, U.S. Army Reserves, teacher, coach, member of Congress, was the ranking member of the Veterans Committee, caring deeply about all those who serve, including, of course, our many Air Force veterans associated with the space mission. This is going to be an administration that is forward-looking, an administration that will truly bring us forward into a bold new future, a future that we are worthy of, and one that we ourselves can be part of making sure becomes a reality. I'm excited that the next speaker is a dear friend of mine, and I couldn't be more thrilled he's running for Congress. He's the real deal. I'm just a fanboy here, but I can tell you, George got me up at 5 in the morning in the Mojave Desert to drive, 2.5, 3 hours with him to see the launch of a spacecraft, one of the first commercial ones, which he can talk about. And wow, what a great experience. But that's the kind of thing he does day in and day out. For me, that was like a once in a lifetime experience. For him, that was like, this is a Wednesday. And he's gone on to have a great career in space. This is the kind of person we need for our future. This is the kind of leadership experience we need. He needs Kamala Harris, and let me tell you, Kamala Harris needs him. His seat was recently changed to leaning Democrat. It's a pickup. It was a toss-up seat. The rating report said leaning Democrat, but that's not till all the votes are counted. He's an amazing individual. He will be a key ally of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in United States Congress, and an agenda for space and for the future that we all deserve. Thank you, everybody, and it couldn't be more of an honor to join you here today. The wonderful Dr. Seven, of course, my God, incredible, and of course, all of our real-world astronauts and aerospace leaders. Thank you for making our future a reality every day.
Governor Polis, thank you so much, and may you live long and prosper. We are almost to our first fundraising goal of $25,000. And of course, part of this call is to encourage you all to contribute to the Harris Victory Fund that supports Vice President Harris and Governor Walz in their run to become President and Vice President of the United States. So please, if you haven't opened your wallets yet, click on the button on the website or the QR code and see if you can give a little bit more to support the campaign. Campaigns, unfortunately, in our system, run on money, but they also run on the right ideas and policies. This November, when voters go to the polls, as Bill Nye says, the stakes couldn't be any higher. Do we vote to keep American freedoms, or do we hand the keys to the nation to angry, pessimistic MAGA autocrats and GOPs? Now, as you know, in the space industry, we love our acronyms. That's greedy, oppressive partisans. We have to fight for our freedoms and values. Our next guest is doing just that. George Whitesides is running for U.S. Congress in California's 27th district against a MAGA incumbent. He was the NASA chief of staff when I was at NASA, and I just loved working with him. He went on to become the CEO of Virgin Galactic, where he led the company through the first human space flights, working to make space access open to all. Over to you, George.
Thanks, John. So good to be with everyone tonight, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be with my home community of space people, and so wonderful to follow Governor Polis, who has been a friend for 30 plus years. And for the record, he did attend the winning flight of the X Prize back in 2004. We bundled in the car together because we had the opportunity to see it. And so he has been an advocate for the industry for a long time, and we're super lucky to have him, not just as the governor of Colorado, but the chairman of the National Governors Association now. Listen, everybody, this is an important election. And obviously, the number one thing we have to do is elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States. I think we have to hark all the way back to Lyndon Johnson to have someone who ran the Space Council, who became president. And we're going to see that happen again this time. And we're so lucky to have somebody who has the depth of knowledge in the space industry, who will then use that knowledge for the benefit of the citizens of our country and for the benefit of the space industry. So we have a great opportunity here. But we also have to do another thing, which is take back the House of Representatives, which is super important. As you said, John, I am running for Congress in the 27th district on the north side of LA County, the Antelope Valley, where the X Prize was won, where the speed of sound was broken, and where we build many of our nation's most important aerospace vehicles. Listen, the race for the House is super close. We have only a need to win around 5 seats total. And this is going to be one of those seats. My opponent has been ranked the 4th most vulnerable in the House of Representatives, and we're outpolling him. We're leading him by a bit. We have a great shot to win, but we're going to need everybody's support. So absolutely, the number one priority is to elect Kamala Harris, because she is going to bring a voice for science and for facts, for rationality, for compassion, and for joy to the White House. And that's what we need to continue. And the other path is too dark to contemplate, but it's one that we need to work every single day for the next 12 weeks to make sure that we are on the right path going forward. And it's such an honor and pleasure to be on with John and so many of my heroes like Bill and of course my former boss, Charlie Bolden, who is an American hero who, I don't even have the right words to describe, but the number of times that he has served our country in so many different roles. We are so lucky to have Charlie Bolden in the space community, and it was an honor to serve with him at NASA. So I'm going to keep this pretty short because I want to make sure that we stay on time, but I'll close with just one story about my favorite movie, which of course is Apollo 13. And many of you have probably seen this movie. And the crux of that movie is when, the spacecraft is broken and they bring together the smartest people around a table on Earth, and they, bring all the pieces of equipment that they think is inside the capsule, inside the, on a table on planet Earth. And they say to the smartest engineers, failure is not an option. We have to solve this problem. And that's where we are with American democracy right now. Failure is not an option. We have to win. We're going to win because we've got facts and compassion on our side, but we really have to run through the tape, everybody, and everybody in the space community, who speaks up for science, who speaks up for facts, who speaks up for climate, who speaks up for exploration and a bright future for our kids. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to win the White House, keep the Senate, and flip the House of Representatives. So thank you, John, for all you are doing to bring together this community. Thanks to everybody else who's joining online. Send you all great regards and best wishes. Let's do this thing together. And thanks so much. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, George. And running for Congress is really hard, and I appreciate it. And, I encourage folks after the show to go to your website and help your campaign because you have to win. All right, we've had some pretty incredible speakers, and I have to say, I'm having trouble in my Vulcan role. My emotions are emerging because the optimism that we're hearing in the speakers is absolutely contagious. And additionally, we've achieved our first milestone, which is to raise $25,000 for the Harris Victory Fund. And thank you very much to all those who have given. We're now at $27,174. So I encourage you to, if you haven't given, please give. If you can give a little bit more, I'm sure it will be put to good use to help us win this election. Charlie Bolden started his NASA career in 1986. And so if you're so inclined, his flight career, donate $19.86. Why not? Or pick your favorite number. If you were born in the year 2000, give $20. Pick a number that will help this cause. Our next guest will be joining holographically from an undisclosed remote star system. He is best known for his role as a holographic doctor on Star Trek. He has appeared in many other science fiction series, including Stargate 1 and The Orville. And as much as I love him as a colleague and friend, I am a huge fan of The Orville, not as much as Star Trek. In real life, he is a tireless advocate for space science and exploration. Please give a holographic welcome to Robert Picardo.
Thank you so much, John. May I open with, please state the nature of the electoral emergency. Our future is at stake, our freedoms, respect for science, for our planet, for women's rights, so much is at stake. And I agree with so many of our speakers thus far that this is the most important election of my lifetime, and I believe yours as well, no matter how old you are. I know I'm probably speaking for my other Star Trek colleagues when I say that we are often admonished in social media to not get involved in politics, as if actors are merely supposed to entertain people, that we're not individuals in our own right, that we shouldn't have the rights of other citizens to express political opinions. Rather than fear hurting people's feelings that may be Star Trek fans and may miss the core message of Star Trek, I'm going to proceed, all right? Because what is the core message of Star Trek besides optimism for the future? It's imagining a future in which science and technology can empower and enable humanity without destroying it, a future in which each individual is respected for the content of their character, not for the color of their skin. And it's a future in which learning and understanding and the pursuit of science is a reason unto itself for exploration. These are all core values of Star Trek. So if you are a Star Trek fan, I suggest that you are not only an optimist by nature, but that you love science. And we cannot afford to go back to another administration where science is under attack. One of my proudest memories of the last few years was in 2017. I spent 2 hours outside in the rain in Washington, D.C. at the March for Science, because science was under attack, could be under attack again, and science is so important. It not only enriches our lives, it is the key to a better future. So we need candidates like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who respect science, who support science, and who understand that that is a key to a better future, not to going back, not to unraveling some of the key advances we've made in protecting our planet and in other areas. Now, there's always been an inspirational relationship between Star Trek and real science, between the real explorers of NASA and the imaginary explorers of Star Trek, all the way back to Nichelle Nichols, our great Star Trek colleague who we lost recently, who was so instrumental in inspiring particularly people of color, particularly women, to enter, to have ambitions, to be astronauts and to work in the space program. And we're at that key inflection point right now in time where it's time for a woman of color and a woman to be president. I was pleased to be on the first Star Trek series with a female captain, Captain Janeway. It was high time. And that was 30 years ago that we had a female leader, although we did beat the Doctor Who franchise by a quarter of a century. We finally had a female captain. So I really believe that this is the moment for Kamala Harris to be our president. And if you are a Star Trek fan and you dream of a brighter future and you believe in science and science capacity to enhance our lives, then I encourage you to please vote. Get out there and vote. Encourage some of your friends or family members who may feel that politics has gotten too depressing, too dirty, too toxic. Think about how in Starfleet, it's all about diplomacy. You don't see Starfleet officers name calling or insulting the intelligence of their opponent, who may be of a different, well, let's say a different alien species in the future. But that's really, I believe that is really code for racism. When you insult an opponent of color, calling them a low intelligence individual. Let's really identify these dog whistles and say, we want a leader who is not only optimistic, but respectful, who understands diplomacy and respect for our historic allies. In the same way, in Starfleet, we have respect for our longtime allies and we support each other. And what is Starfleet? What is other than a United Nations in space? So if we want to restore dignity, raise the discourse in politics, we need candidates of dignity, not name callers. So, of course, with great policies as well. And Kamala Harris is part of the current administration, which has a tremendous record of achievement. So I'm delighted here, delighted to be part of this very impressive group of speakers from science and science fiction. I encourage you all to donate to the Harris Victory Fund and to speak up, get the word out, talk to, as I said, friends or family members who might be tired of politics and perhaps are not going to vote, and tell them that they have to. Our futures depend on it. Back to you, Charlie. I'm sorry, back to you, John. Thank you.
If anyone doesn't think that's inspiring, I don't know what is. Bob, thank you so much. Our very next special guest, I met for the first time after walking down the stairs from Space Shuttle Columbia after landing on STS-109, my second mission to the Hubble Space Telescope. When we got down to the bottom, he looked me in the eyes and he said, I'd like to shake the hand of the guy who performed surgery on the Hubble to save the beloved observatory. Well, I was feeling pretty good. We'd had a successful mission and a bit of a smart ass. So I proffered my left hand, as that's the hand I used to do the repair on the Hubble that we called surgery. Since then, we've remained friends, and he always greets me as the Southpaw Savant. I served with the 10th Administrator of NASA, the Honorable Sean O'Keefe, under the George W. Bush administration where Sean led the Moon, Mars, and Beyond vision for space exploration, really the roadmap for space we are still executing with Artemis. We are honored to have a Republican leader here to support Harris for president. Take it away, boss.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate the opportunity to be invited to this wonderful event to support Vice President Harris. As you and Charlie both know, and I am a Republican, no doubt. I served in 4 different roles as an appointee for 2 different Republican presidents, both of them named Bush. Months ago, it was apparent to me that there would not be a Republican in the 2024 race for the presidency. Certainly not a candidate with the principles and policies I ever associated with Republicans. But no matter, Vice President Harris is a very active candidate for president who supports space objectives to the benefit of all humankind, for all the reasons that have been articulated by those who have spoken before me here. For 4 years, she's been the chair of the National Space Council and serves as vice president in an administration that is, as John mentioned, implementing much of the space policy and strategy that was introduced by President George W. Bush just a year after the Columbia Space Shuttle tragedy, in what was then his vision for space exploration policy declaration. For 2 decades, these policies have continued space exploration, technology development for space and benefits here on Earth, and public promotion of commercial space access. All these objectives have largely been sustained by bipartisan support in Congress and by 4 different presidential administrations. If ever we wanted to find evidence that space is nonpartisan, this is it. The vice president is an enthusiastic leader for these objectives to be achieved with international partners that capture the aspirations and ambitions on behalf of all Americans and indeed of all of us on this planet. The most important thing, as you've heard by a couple of different speakers before me, that we can all do, all of us, is to vote. For her commitment and dedication to these larger goals I've described, I am very proud to support Vice President Kamala Harris to be President of the United States. Back to you, John. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, boss. Great words. We all know this is an important election. We've heard that consistently through the message. We've heard it in the media. But I mean, let's be honest. The MAGA extreme Republican Party wants women in this country to become Borg drones. Our next guest knows a little about that. Jeri Ryan is an acclaimed actress, best known for her iconic role as Seven of Nine, the liberated Borg drone on Star Trek Voyager. Her portrayal of a character grappling with the intersection of humanity and technology has made her a beloved figure in the sci-fi community, inspiring fans, industry professionals, and me. Jeri, thank you so much for agreeing to come on tonight, and we look forward to hearing your words.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And it is such an honor to be on this with so many actual space people. We pretend, you guys actually do it. And it's a thrill for us to be a part of this with all of you. And thank you to all of you who are watching and donating. Please keep donating. This, as everybody has mentioned, is literally life and death, this election. I wish it weren't, but it is. I mean, the life of our planet, the life of women who are literally bleeding out in bathrooms and their cars in waiting rooms of hospitals because they can't get healthcare. It's never been more important, not to mention the life of our democracy in this country. And as I know Bob touched on and Camille mentioned earlier, I think it's really important for all of us, not just people who have sort of a bigger platform on social media or in the public eye or whatever, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because I think too many of us for too long have been willing to sort of take the easy route. And, we'll post and we'll say, yay, and we'll vote. But we don't really want to get our hands dirty and have to do the nasty stuff and get people mad at us. And this is too important. And it's time that we have to speak out and we have to get active and we have to get involved, because the last thing we want to sit through is another 2016 where we think, oh, it's in the bag. And, half people don't vote because they think they don't need to. And the ugly surprise when we wake up the next morning. So this is on all of us. We all have to do everything that we can. Yes, you have to vote. Yes, please check your voter registration, even if you voted in every election and you think you're set. I can speak from personal experience. I have voted in every election since 2016. And all of a sudden I didn't get my mail-in ballot. I always voted by mail before the primaries this year. And I went online and checked, and my registration was completely messed up. They had me suddenly registered to some address I've never been to or heard of or anything. So I had to completely re-register and go vote in person and get it straightened out. But so I make it a point, especially if you live in a swing state, it is so critical, or a red state. Check your registration and recheck it, and get all of your friends to check and recheck. Talk to people, knock on doors, make the phone calls, write the postcards, all the things that we can do, we need to do, because it's too critical. And, as Bob had mentioned, I'm very fortunate to have worked in the Star Trek universe. And what I love about it is what I love about Kamala and Tim Walz. It's optimism, and it's an embrace of our differences, and an enthusiasm and an actual joy, a celebration of our differences. And that's what Star Trek is. And we need to move toward that future, and we are not going back. So let's please all do everything that we can. Vote blue up and down the ballot, because the last thing we want to do is tie her hands as soon as she gets in office without having a blue Congress behind her. We've got to get the House. We've got to keep the Senate. We need real majorities, so she can pass some critical legislation and protect all of us. So please donate. Please talk to everyone you know. Please talk to people you don't know. I accost random strangers and make sure they're registered to vote. So please, let's all get this done, and let's celebrate this incredibly joyful president and vice president to be. And thank you all for being here.
Jerry, thank you so much. Wonderful. The contributions tonight that I hope all of you are making go to the Kamala Harris Victory Fund. And the engineering of that is that the first $6,600 in individual gives goes to the Kamala Harris for President Fund. And anything beyond that can be used for those other races that Jerry talked about, Senate races, House races. And I know I'm sure the Democratic National Committee is looking at, where is the best place to put those funds. So if you want to give more than $6,600 tonight, I encourage you to do so. If not, our next guest was in the control room during the first moon landing in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the moon. So if you're so inclined, perhaps give $19.69 to the Victory Fund, or better yet, $196.90 in her honor. And I am so grateful that our next guest has taken the time to join us. She is a pioneering engineer and the first woman to work in NASA's mission control during the Apollo program. She played a crucial role in the successful return of the Apollo 13 mission and has been a vocal advocate for women's rights in STEM education. If you don't know about her many achievements, I really encourage you to go online after the show and read about her incredible career. Please welcome the vibrant Poppy Northcutt.
Hello, I'm Poppy Northcutt, and I'm here in Space City, USA, aka Houston, Texas. As our county Democratic Party chair says, this is Harris County. We are the big blue enchilada in Texas. If we carry Harris County big, we'll carry Texas, and that's 40 electoral votes. Bam. More than 50 years ago, I started working for a contractor to NASA named, the contractor was TRW Systems, and I started out as a computerist. If you have seen the movie Hidden Figures, you're familiar with that job title. Sort of a gendered computer is what my job title was. I was assigned to work with a bunch of guys because women engineers at that time were rarer than whooping cranes. But I was assigned to work with a bunch of guys developing a family of analytic math models to compute a variety of maneuvers for Apollo missions. Aborts from Earth orbit, translunar injection, lunar orbit insertion, trans-Earth injection, mid-course corrections. Most of my time was spent working on the abort program, aborts from within the moon's sphere of influence. Well, when they geared up Apollo 8, I was privileged to become the first woman in mission control in an operational support role, manning what at first was called the abort support console. They changed the name of it to retro support because calling it abort support made it sound too dangerous to be in space. But after that success, I was there for 8, 10, 11, 12, and 13. When I wasn't in mission control, I was across the street working on math models for 2 and 3 impulse maneuver missions, high inclination missions, advanced lunar missions, and also even doing some work on Mars missions. Unfortunately, we never did those advanced lunar missions, much less the Mars. So my vision then and my vision today is finish the job, finish exploring the moon, and then make that even longer leap to and safely back from Mars. I'm supporting Kamala Harris and the Democratic ticket because, as Mr. Spock would say, that's the only logical solution to our problem. I don't want to go back. As much fun as I had in those old days, back to the days, it was days of racial segregation. It was an all-white mission control room, and I was the only woman in an operational role. Back to the days when we had sex-segregated want ads, male only wanted, women wanted. Back to the days when a schoolmate of mine, for example, nearly died from an illegal abortion. Back to the days when I was being paid about 53 cents on the dollar as compared to men doing the same or similar work. I don't want to go back to those days when it was a rarity to see mission control, women in mission control. And that's what Project 2025 and the GOP wants to do. It's very clear what they want to do. I like the present. I like the present where we have superwomen in space as astronauts, and on the floor and on the ground as flight controllers and flight directors, where we have folks like my friend Rosalie Lopez out at JPL, who has the world record for discovering active volcanoes, and they happen to be on the moons of Jupiter or places like that. I like the present where we have a Black job being Vice President of the United States. And I'm looking forward to the future where it's a woman's job to be President of the United States. So I'm working to elect Kamala Harris in the Democratic ticket. I especially hope we elect Colin Allred to replace Ted Cruz in the United States Senate. I'm a precinct chair. I'm a deputy voter registrar. I'm an election judge. I'm all in. And the energy that I'm seeing out there, I was out registering voters over the weekend. It's great. Absolutely great. I haven't seen this much excitement and interest by young voters in years. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen quite this much excitement. There's a song from the 70s that fits what I'm seeing among young women. I am woman, hear me roar. So I hope to hear you and your friends roaring in support of Kamala and Tim and electing Democrats up and down the ballot. I'm go for this mission. Back to you, John.
Wow, Poppy, that was incredible. I know you're now fully employed until November, but afterwards, I think there's still a job for you at the Johnson Space Center working on trajectories. They probably need your help. And I'm really glad you used the term superwoman, because our next guest is a superwoman aerospace engineer with a 29-year NASA history, a senior leader at the Johnson Space Center, an advocate for diversity in space exploration with a focus on inspiring women and girls to pursue STEM careers. Our next guest is Camille Alleyne, currently the founder of geospatial analytics startup Russ Space. Camille, we are so happy that you're on tonight.
I am so delighted to be here, John. Thank you for having me. This is a moment. This is the most consequential moment in our lives, electing Vice President Harris and Governor Walz to be the next 47th President and Vice President of the United States. I can't tell you how excited I am to support the VP in making history as the first woman of color on the top of the Democratic ticket and our next 47th president. As a woman and a woman of color, and a woman of color who is an immigrant, to hear how immigrants are maligned is very disheartening. And we come to this country, we adopt. I've been here more than half my life, served this country as a civil servant for more than almost 30 years. And it's, we really need leadership that appreciates what we all bring to the table. I've been part of the space community for more than 30 years. And like our VP, I've come from humble beginnings in the Caribbean and rose up to senior leadership at the most preeminent space agency in the world. I started my career at NASA right out of grad school in 1992 and grew up at Johnson Space Center. I recently retired, but I look back fondly on my time during my career. It's been the greatest honor of my life to serve alongside some of the most brilliant humans that you will ever meet on the planet. And it's a community I hold dear to my heart. I felt so blessed to be a part of a community and an environment that valued diversity and a place where everyone has a voice and they're seen and they have a sense of belonging, which is so critical to solving very hard problems and challenges we face in space exploration. And this is what our VP and Governor Walz both stand for: nurturing a society where everyone feels seen, feels heard, no one is left behind, and everyone feels a sense of belonging. That's the vision that they have for our country, and it is the one that gives me the most hope and most joy. We are a community that cares about our planet and takes seriously the stewardship of our Earth. The Harris-Walz ticket believes in taking deliberate action in protecting our planet and mitigating the threats that climate change poses. But our VP says, we're the underdogs, so we can't rest. We can't rest. We all have to bring our geniuses to the table. whether it's volunteering at your local Democratic Party or regional or at the federal, at the national level. Please get out and vote and volunteer and bring your talents to bear. We have almost, I think, 81 days left, and it's so important. I am so excited for the future with VP Harris and Governor Walz. And it's such an honor for me to raise my voice and be with you today. So let's go, Space Cadets. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Wow, Camille, thanks so much for sharing your story, and thanks for supporting the missions that I flew. I was, incredibly lucky to be at the Johnson Space Center in such a great, diverse environment. People from other countries who have come to the U.S., people of color. It really brought to light and highlighted, that diversity is our strength, and that it brings the best ideas to the table. And I think we've heard that from all the speakers, and the importance of that. And, I've read that in Vice President Kamala Harris's Space Council policies, that space for everyone is a wrapper that she thinks is very important. And that's not only, for, bringing in all the best ideas and all the people who would be interested in participating in the space program, but also, as we've talked about, for commercial space, for other opportunities to get to space or to learn about space and do space science. We are right at $40,000, which is $40,000, 217. I'm already blown away that we've raised this much money, but I'm sure we can do more. As I think all of you probably know, the Enterprise tail number is NCC 1701. And so to celebrate that or honor that, how about giving $17.01? And it'll make you feel good that you are supporting and honoring the Enterprise. Our next guest, actor and director Robbie McNeill, is best known by his fans as the helmsman and pilot Tom Paris on Star Trek Voyager. He is also the co-creator of the podcast Delta Flyers, where he and Garrett Wang talk about episodes of Star Trek. And you can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. But we are so lucky that we can hear from him right now. Robbie, I can't not think of you as Tom
I'm in
Paris.
character. I'm in character. So thank you. Thank you, John. First of all, I just want to say I am very impressed. I don't often give Bob Picardo compliments, but I am incredibly impressed with how articulate he was. And so I'm going to admit that right here. And second of all, I am just speechless to be in the presence of real astronauts, real scientists. We just pretend. We go out and use our imagination and have fun and get to play around. But you guys are the inspiration for all the things that we've done. So I just want to acknowledge that. I'm really honored to be here. And I'm so impressed with your involvement. That's what this comes down to, is people getting involved, people talking to their friends, talking to their neighbors, getting involved. And I just wanted to read a quote. This is Benjamin Franklin. I've been reading a lot of history books lately. After the Continental Congress finished and Benjamin Franklin was walking out, a woman, Elizabeth Powell, asked him, "Do we have a republic or a monarchy, Mr. Franklin?" And he said, "Well, you have a republic, madam, if you can keep it. If you can keep it. That's why we're here. We're at a point we have to do the work. We have to all show up, because otherwise we may not keep this republic, this country that we have." That's how important this election is. So yeah, John introduced me. I played Tom Paris on Star Trek Voyager. Very grateful for those 7 years getting to fly the ship. I now produce and direct a show called Resident Alien, another science fiction show about about an alien who comes to Earth to kill all the humans because they think humans don't care about the environment. They're destroying, they're fighting with each other. They're just not salvageable. In Resident Alien, Harry Vanderspiegel, played by Alan Tudyk, comes to kill all the humans in the first episode. He's done. They're done with us. And over the course of the show, he learns the true human spirit, that humans are redeemable, that there is hope for them, that there's value in every single human, as imperfect as we all may be. And I get really inspired being a part of some of these shows, being a part of Star Trek, the optimism of Gene Roddenberry's vision. Star Trek started a very short run back in the 60s. It was not a big hit. The thing that kept Star Trek alive and made it what it is today is the fans. It's the fans. It's the grassroots people coming together to say, this is worth something. Getting together at conventions, writing letters to CBS, not giving up, not being pessimistic. That's what kept Star Trek alive and allowed it to flourish into this incredible franchise that has inspired so many people to go into science, to go into space. So getting involved makes a difference. This isn't a waste of your time. This isn't a waste of your time to give money. It's not a waste of your time to gather together, to get motivated and inspired about making a difference. It's very, very important. I'm really grateful that we on Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, had the very first female captain, as Bob said. Way overdue, but we and by the way, when Captain Janeway, when our show first aired, not everybody loved it. Not everybody was happy about that. And sometimes change can be scary, doing things that are different for Star Trek. It can feel a little scary, but as Gene Roddenberry said, we have to go forward. We can't go back. And this is what Donald Trump and the GOP platform wants to do. They want to take us back. They don't want to go forward. They don't value science. They don't value truth. They don't value facts. This GOP platform, this Trump GOP platform, is the most extreme platform we have ever seen in the United States of America, ever. And as Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if we can keep it. We've got to get involved. We've got to go out and, we phone bank, donate money, volunteer, canvas. I've done those things, and I tell you, I get more out of it than I think I'm giving to anyone else. I have conversations with people that are incredibly inspiring. I get to meet people from all walks of life, whether it's phone banking on the phone, talking to people, whether it's knocking on doors. That stuff matters. And the other side, they're doing that. They're getting organized. They're taking action. And that minority of people that want that control, it's not the vast majority of people in the United States of America. We've seen the polls. We've seen how the votes go when you put something out on a state election. People want to move forward. They want progress. And that's what Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz want to do. They want to take us forward. They value science. I bet they're Star Trek fans. And that's why I believe in this campaign. And that's why I believe it's so important for us to keep talking, talk to your family, talk to your friends. I know not everybody wants to talk politics, but if you don't feel comfortable presenting your position, ask them what their thoughts are. Start a conversation by just being curious and asking them questions. I have some family members that it's not always easy to have these conversations, but I find it easiest to talk about the values. What are people's values? Do they value honesty? Do they value, respect? Do they value, what do they value? And that's where you can start to build a conversation, even if you're on the different sides of the aisle. So I'm thrilled to be here. Space Cadets is an awesome name. I love the name, and I'm really honored, as I said, to be in the company of so many incredibly smart. I was very intimidated, I got to say, when I first logged on to this. Very intimidated. I wish that I could really go to space someday. I am so jealous. We got to pretend, we got to sit in front of a fake view screen and see the star field and, you know, the Hollywood version. But I think the idea of being in space, of you know, seeing the vastness, how small we truly are in this universe, and how much more there is to discover. And that's why we've got to move forward. We've got to move forward. So thank you again for inviting me. I'm really honored to be here. And everybody out there, donate. Like I said, you can donate the money, as John mentioned. This is going to help this campaign and all the down ballot candidates. We've got to not just get Vice President Harris and Governor Walz elected. We've got to get senators elected. We've got to get Congress people elected. We've got to get this country into a place that's not focused on lies, that's not focused on fear, that's not, you know, Armin Shimmerman is on our podcast now. And Armin often talks about Quark's experience of feeling like the other, that the Ferengis, you know, that this idea of the other, the scary other, is a very dangerous road to go down. And that's not the road we want to go down. We want to come together. We want to keep this republic by staying united and connected and optimistic, just like the Star Trek vision, just like Gene Roddenberry said, just like these real life astronauts and Bill Nye and even Bob Picardo, who I hate to give a compliment to. Yeah, please stay involved and stay optimistic. And I'll give it back to you, John. Thank you.
Robbie, thank you so much. And I will say that, you know, when my family's watching Resident Alien, they have to suffer through me saying, I think that in the previous administration, Donald Trump was the resident alien coming to kill us all. He did a pretty good job with about 1 million Americans during COVID, sadly. But,
Yes.
you know, this is a critical time, and thank you so much for your remarks.
Thank you.
Actor and director Tim Russ may be best known for his role as the Vulcan officer Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager and others in the series. He has directed and appeared in many films and television series, is an accomplished musician with a number of albums to his credit. And he's probably not going to like me saying this, but of most import to me is that he was in the film Spaceballs, which makes me laugh, you know, belly laugh like Kamala Harris every time I watch it, which I'm embarrassed to say is quite a lot. Over to you, Tuvok.
Got it. I was muted now. Thank you all for having me on board for this. It's a very, very important cause, and I'm glad I was invited, and a pleasure to be here. So as mentioned, and I'd like to also add to that, I am very honored to be in the presence of real scientists and astronauts. I'm just an amateur astronomer, so I have been partaking of that hobby for about 36 years, 37 years, and I enjoy it tremendously. I get so much out of it, and I think it's a very important frontier, as it were, the final frontier, if you will. So it's an honor to be in the presence of those who are really spending their lives and their time and their energy and their expertise studying the cosmos and getting to know all the mysteries of the universe. It's such a fascinating thing. I want to say to the people who are watching that, to add to what Robbie said and what has sort of been the common theme here, is that we are at a particular crossroads in the governing of this country. And we have to make an effort to stay informed about what's happening in our politics, our government, and how to get involved in what's going on in our government. The forces that are at work out there are hell-bent on destroying our constitutional democracy and taking us back to the Stone Age. And we cannot let them do that. They are dedicated. They have spent decades trying to get to the point that they're at right now. They never sleep, they never rest. And we have to be equally diligent in our efforts to combat that effort. Our democracy has lasted 250 years, and it's still working, which is a testament to the foresight of our founding fathers. Imagine today trying to create a constitutional government that is supposed to function 250 years from today. Can you imagine that? I mean, 250 years into the future from now. You have no idea what the world's going to be like that far ahead. And yet they managed to do so. That our democracy is a functioning entity that works. But it's like a garden. Democracy is very much like a garden. It must be attended to constantly. The seeds of that democratic garden must be planted. They must be fertilized, weeded, ridden of pests, and pruned. It has to be tended to constantly. And eventually we can enjoy the bounty of that harvest. So I ask everyone who is watching to please help us by donating to the Harris Walls campaign and help us get the word out to everyone. And you get the word out to your friends and your family to make sure that they are registered and that they vote in November. We have to do this, and this is the only way we're going to get it done. And we can't stop this November. We have to continue. We have to continue for the midterms and the next presidential election and the next midterms, on and on and on. There cannot stop. We have to be involved. We have to be engaged. We have to be knowledgeable of what's happening, and we have to participate. Otherwise, we can lose all of this. So I implore everybody to go out and do that in November. Let's do this. Thank you very much.
Wow, Tim, thank you so much. It's a heavy message, but that's what we need to think about going into this election. If there's a chance that we can live long and prosper, we need to win in November.
You're here.
I think, many of you know that first contact between the Federation and the Vulcans was in 2063. So if you can donate 2063, we would be most appreciative. One of the characteristics that I learned, probably in kindergarten, but apparently not everybody learned it, is honesty. And there's no gray area as an astronaut that you have to have brutal honesty, because it's a life and death environment. If you make a mistake on orbit, you have to fess up. In your communications between the orbit and ground or between other astronauts, you need to exercise brutal honesty. It's just that important. I think it's just that important in politics as well, and we don't have that right now. Fortunately, we have a number of astronauts on this call, and one of them is an out-of-this-world guest. Our next guest is Dottie Metcalf-Lindenburger. She's a geologist, a former Earth Science and Astronomy high school teacher, a former NASA astronaut and educator who flew on STS-31 in 2010. She was also a track and field coach and Science Olympiad coach at Hudson Bay High School in Vancouver, Washington. So I think there's probably students who call her coach, not to be confused with Tim Waltz, of course. Please welcome Coach Dottie Metcalf.
John, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this evening. It's been wonderful to hear from those that I've honored and admired before, and I look forward to continuing on. And I love watching that red bar keep reaching new and new goals. I have been a Kamala Harris supporter since 2019. I had hoped that she would carry us into the presidential office in 2020, but I also then shifted and got behind the Biden campaign and have been supporting her as our vice president. When she announced Tim Walz as her running mate, I learned about an incredible teacher who's also married to another teacher. And it feels a little bit like my household, where I am a high school science teacher, but my husband is going into his 26th year as also a history and social studies and English teacher. And I think that from that hat, I would like to address tonight, because I really feel some of the pieces about public education supports our democracy. And the first thing is that it's public. It hasn't always been perfect, and it hasn't always welcomed every one of us that was on this call. But today it does, and it continues to evolve. So with that hat on, I am standing with this campaign and donating to this campaign and reaching out for this campaign, because I believe that a strong public educational system needs to be one where we do talk about the facts, both in our civics classes and understand how our democracy works, and also in our science classes and all of our classes. And I want that education to be a place where all are welcome. And I see that in this ticket for sure. And I love that a football coach was also a part of the Gay Straight Alliance and as a leader there for those students. I want to be with this campaign because I want public education to be where we are keeping our children safe. And my student teaching in 1999 is when Columbine happened. I sent my daughter off to kindergarten, and months later, Sandy Hook happened. We cannot keep sending our children off to school and not have them be safe. And once again, I see this ticket showing that we can make smart gun law decisions. And again, I just want to go back that this is an education for all, and democracy is for all. Except I am the mother of a 17-year-old daughter, and she is not going to be 18 in time for November. So in addition to voting for all the things I just spoke about, I will be voting for her so that she can make choices about herself and about her body in the future. Let's keep curiosity in the classroom. Let's provide the rigor and the facts in those classrooms. And let's have the courage to boldly send a woman into the presidency. Let's vote the Kamala Harris-Walz ticket. Thank you so much.
Dottie, thank you so much for coming on. Your energy is infective. And I hope, it infects everybody on this call, and I hope they transfer that excitement to 10 other people or more. Thank you so much for coming on. Our next guest, without his participation, this call would not have happened. And when I contacted him, he could have said, setting up a mass online call like this is difficult. It takes years of planning and is unlikely to be successful. But because he also said, I'll help you and help you put together the team, so far, I would say we're doing a good job. And so without this next guest, this event would never have happened. Ross Morales Rocketto is the organizer of White Dudes for Harris, co-founder of the organization Way to Win, a group that focuses on progressive political power in the US. Oh, no. He's been instrumental in organizing grassroots campaigns and strategies. Ross, over to you.
Thanks so much, John. I really appreciate it. And I'm just so excited to be here tonight. When John asked me if I wanted to help, if I wanted to talk, I was one part really excited and one part really nervous. And I've already emceed one of these before. And honestly, I'm feeling just as nervous on this one, in part because space was my first love. When I was in middle school, I saw the movie Apollo 13 and it changed my life. I was a kid who was relentlessly bullied. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't know how to interact with other kids. I was the kid who sat by himself in the lunchroom because whenever I'd sit at a table, other people would get up and leave. and something that I'd never really vocalized publicly before is that during this period of time, I struggled with suicidal thoughts. I didn't think I had any worth. So when I saw that movie, it sparked a love in something I didn't really know existed. Space gave me something to hold on to dream about, that maybe one day I could be one of those folks pushing the envelope and going to places that no other human had ever been. I ended up going to space camp. I found my people. I gained confidence. I ended up interning for my local congressman because I was trying to get a letter of recommendation to go to a service academy. My grades improved. I wanted to be an astronaut, and I wanted to go into space. That movie and sort of the idea of exploration for its own sake made me feel like there was something to live for and to dream about. And I clearly didn't end up becoming an astronaut. I'm afraid of heights. I've always had really bad eyesight. I'm really bad at science and engineering. So, you know, I found other ways to have an impact in the world. But it really, truly is not an exaggeration to say that seeing that movie and my subsequent lifelong love of space did save my life and showed me all of the wonder that exists in the world, in the world and outside of it. And that's why I'm really honored to be here tonight in the company of people who are real life heroes, people I've looked up to. What you all have done has really inspired me and so many others, and I'll always be grateful for it. You know, as John mentioned, I was one of the folks who organized the White Dudes for Harris call, and I did that because I wanted to make sure everyone who supported the vice president had a chance to gather and participate together and have space with one another. Her candidacy has really inspired me in many of the same ways that space has also inspired me. It makes me think about what's possible, how we can build the world that we want right now, today, and visit new frontiers in this country and beyond. I'm deeply appreciative for folks having me. And I'd be remiss if I didn't make a plug to click that donate button. It's so important to elect the vice president and Governor Walz. We need folks who understand and will invest in space exploration, science, and honestly, in the dreams of kids like me. I'm feeling really inspired by this, and you know, I'm not. You know, I work a nonprofit job in my full-time gig, so I don't have quite as much to give, but like I will be matching the next $500 in donations that come in. So thanks again for having me, and I'll kick it back to you, John.
Thank you so much. That is incredible. So please, you know, open your wallets, and Russ, thank you so much. The question of whether we're alone in the universe is one of the most compelling questions in science. Did life start on Earth or elsewhere in the solar system? Could have been transferred to Earth on a meteorite from Mars. Is there life, or was there life on Mars? Could we be Martians? Our next guest is a professional Martian, planetary scientist Tanya Harrison. She specializes in Martian geology and is a great communicator and is currently working as a science strategy consultant. Over to you, Tanya.
Thanks so much, John. It's really exciting to be here. I think for anybody that maybe knows who I am from Instagram or LinkedIn, the first reaction might be, aren't you Canadian? Aren't you in Canada? Why are you doing something for the US election? And I am a US citizen. I've worked and lived on both sides of the border. I've worked with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency, and voting is extremely important. I wanted to come on to really emphasize for anybody that might be tuning in who is an American living abroad, that there are ways to help you make sure that your vote gets in and counts, because this election is probably the most critical one that we've ever had in our lives. It's really going to set the future, not only for, you know, what is happening in space, but for so many other issues around human rights in our country, or in the US. I'm not in the US right now. But if you are an American living abroad and you need help accessing resources to figure out how to get your vote in, there's a trusted organization that I found out about through an organization called Democrats Abroad. It's called votefromabroad.org. They've been around for 17 years. So you can go there and they will help you figure out how to do your absentee voting. And it's a great group to be a part of if you want to stay involved in politics while you're abroad. I think right now is really critical for us as people that are excited about space to be involved in politics, because we are seeing a lot of cuts to science funding. I'm sure we're all brokenhearted over things like the loss of the Viper rover, cuts that we've seen around things like Mars sample return and layoffs at places like JPL. And so it's really time for us to double down and advocate for what our community needs to continue this type of inspiration through exploration, keeping, as Dottie said, curiosity in the classrooms by getting people excited about space again, really focusing on, you know, how we can use space to inspire people. And I think that, you know, this is a really great opportunity to do that. I guess I should plug the event that we're all here for. You know, make sure that you donate for this. These donations really do make a difference in political campaigns. I apologize for the background noise. I had to step out of an event to do this. So make sure you click the donate button to be a part of this. You can still donate again, even if you are an American living abroad. And thanks so much for having me be a part of this event.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and really appreciate you stepping out. All right, short fundraising plug break. After all those inspirational speakers, we are tantalizingly close to $50,000. Now, why is $50,000 significant? One, because it's a lot of money, and two, because we have 5 fingers on our hands and feet, fingers and toes. If we were aliens with 4, we would already passed 40,000, or 60,000, but we are at 48,600. So let's keep the momentum going and see if we can break that 50,000. John Billingsley is our next Star Trek icon, known for his role as Dr. Phlox in Star Trek Enterprise. He's appeared in various films and television shows, including True Blood and The Man from Earth. In the Stargate 1 episode, The Other Guys, he plays a scientist with a fascination with Star Trek who says he dresses up as a Vulcan at Star Trek conventions. John, may you live long and prosper. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What a lovely introduction. I've also played a lot of serial killers, but we won't touch on that. No one needs convincing that we want a blue wave, so I'm not going to spend my time talking about that. That's a given. What I do want to talk about is one notion, just one notion, on how to help raise dough and awareness for Kamala, George Whitesides, who I adore, or any other way cool Democrat you might choose. It is simple, it is old-fashioned, throw a potluck. An old-timey Minnesota-type Tim Walz beer keg, dogs, and frisbees bash in a local park. You contact the Parks Department. I guarantee you this is not hard. You reserve some tables. This is important. Don't spend money. Don't spend money. Don't spend money. Don't hire a valet. Don't hire a bartender. Don't hire a band. Don't make it elaborate. Don't take forever doing it. Keep it simple, because we don't have a lot of time. The goal is to make money, not spend money, and to get people involved by sheer dint of the fact that they're already making goddamn deviled eggs. And if there is some dumbass concern on the part of the Parks Department about tisk, you can't express a political opinion, then do it in somebody's backyard. That's fine. Although candidly, what the Parks Department doesn't know won't hurt them, and if asked, you can just say it's a retirement party for Donald Trump. If you feel friendless in the world, who do I invite? Oh dear. Throw the party with a couple, just a couple, 2 or 3 very close pals, and get them to invite their buddies. But ideally, shoot for a party of about 75 to 100 people. And remember, and this is critical, more people like you than you realize. I accept Bob Picardo to the side. More people like you than you realize. The more generously you define friendship, the more people you'll reach out to, and the more people you will galvanize. This is about networking. I'm sure your dentist really likes you. Invite him to the potluck. And at the party, have fun. Fun. My God, fun. Remember fun? With people. That is what Kamala and Tim Walz represent to me. fun, joy, laughter, optimism, Captain Corn Dogs, and carnival rides instead of crap sandwiches and American carnage. And speak a bit, because we need to learn to speak a little bit to our pals. Not a ton, but a bit. On behalf of Kamala, on behalf of the Democratic Party, and pass the hat. Now, I'm a dinosaur, so I think literally, pass the hat. But in deference to all of you smarty pants people, pass the Act Blue hat, like we're doing tonight. You're not trying to raise a gajillion bucks. You're just trying to raise something. And at the end of the potluck, you make one more speech. And that speech is the speech I just made. You say, raise your hand if you're willing to throw a potluck. Keep your hands up, and then you write down the names and the contact numbers of everybody who's got their hands up, and you stay gently in touch with those people to remind them of what they were going to do. Some won't do it, some will do it. It's all gravy. You're playing with house money. And their potluck, it's the same damn potluck that you just threw. Same format, backyard, don't spend money, beer keg, dogs, pretzels, the whole 9 yards. Don't get precious, do it quickly, bring a few friends in, throw a potluck, and guess what? At the end of that potluck, everybody raise their hand if they are prepared to throw a potluck. It's metastasizing networking. It's metastasizing friendship. I call it the Johnsy scheme. We did this for Katie Hill in 2017, a group of us, and we helped raise about $250,000. Nobody spent a lot of dough. And this is really important, and maybe the key point I want to make. A bunch of people ended up volunteering for Katie's campaign who might not otherwise have volunteered because they were approached from a different direction. It wasn't just about, you must come and you must canvass, because some people, they ain't good at canvassing. But when they're approached from another direction, come to a party, we'll throw the Frisbee, you'll hear a little bit about Katie Hill. Oh, they got involved in the campaign. Honestly, mostly, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You don't have to be the best phone banker, door knocker, fundraiser. You don't have to do something you suck at. What you have to do is more than you would have otherwise done if you hadn't been nudged. And own the idea that you can pass that message on in turn. The message of nudge. Nudge your pals and be generous in the way you define both of those terms. Generous nudging. Generous in the way you recognize you got pals and get to work. That's my 2 cents. Thanks for having me.
All right, John, you've convinced me. When you schedule your potluck, I don't know where you live. I will be there. I'll bring some Romulan ale and maybe some Klingon gach.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Excellent. I love it.
We are within $600 of 50K. So one of you out there could solve it right away to get us to 50K with a donation of $600 or more. Astrobiologist extraordinaire, science communicator, host of the NASA show Ask an Astrobiologist, Graham Lau explores the possibilities of life beyond Earth. He's a research scientist with the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science and contributes to our understanding of astrobiology and planetary science, and is also my neighbor. Over to you, Graham.
Well, John, thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to join this amazing lineup of people tonight. I give lots of talks. I give talks to colleges and middle schools and high schools. I give talks to kids from around the world about astrobiology and space science and careers. And I have to say, of all the talks I've given, like, my heart is racing just having the chance to join all of these remarkable people here tonight in this live stream to share our support for Camilla Harris and Tim Walz to win this election. I'm going to start a little bit grander in scale, I think, than some others have, and thinking of where we're going right now in the near future and the far future for our civilization. So much is changing right now radically. As Carl Sagan once said, we live in a society that is exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which almost no one understands anything about science and technology. And that same thing can be said of many of our politicians, our leaders. We need a future where we have leaders who are thinking of where we're going, especially in science and technology. And for myself, as an astrobiologist, someone who wonders if we're alone in the universe, and if there are aliens out there, what are they like? Are there alien civilizations out there who've maybe come to this same grand moment in time where we are right now in our civilization? We now have the technology, thanks to space exploration and Earth observation, thanks to a lot of our science, that we understand our impact on our planet, and we are radically changing this planet right now, and we know that. But we also know that we have the technology and the knowledge and the ambition to do something about it. I often wonder, are there civilizations out there who've come to these moments where they've realized they've changed their world and they want to make it better, they want to do something better, but they need to figure out how to be better first. There's a very famous essay by Martin Luther King Jr. Based on a speech he gave called The World House, where he articulates that we've come to a time where we have guided missiles and misguided men. We've put so much of our time and energy into building weapons of destruction and not really thinking of the value we can bring to each other on this planet. And for me personally, those out there who know me may know that I've never been a Democrat. I've never been a Republican. I very rarely have actively stood up and supported any candidates in any elections, but this one I feel is very important. I think now is a time to bring back civil discourse, rational thought, and leadership that really works towards building that better future. You know, we have some remarkable actors joining us tonight who were in Star Trek, and I love Star Trek. I want to see a future like Star Trek. But as my friend and colleague, Dr. David Grinspoon, has often remarked, getting to a Star Trek future, it's not just having the money to build shiny, nice rockets. It's also developing that love and care and compassion, having just law, just understanding of what we're doing, being inclusive and thinking of how we can all do this together, finding ways to lift each other up into that beautiful future that's possible for us. And so, like I said, you know, going a bit grander right now, our future is changing in ways that we might not really be able to comprehend yet. We have artificial intelligence coming around right now, and some of us wonder, is AGI in the very near future going to happen? We have the greatest technologies we've ever had, but also along with that, the greatest chance to harm ourselves we've ever had. And so moving into this grand future, I think it's important now for myself and others like me to stand up and support Kamala Harris, support Tim Walz, and make this future happen. Help us get out there into the cosmos to explore, to find out if maybe we're not alone, and maybe we can go find some friends out there and maybe build a universal or galactic federation of planets where we can actually work together and make a better future for all of us.
Graham, thanks so much. And on this call tonight, we are making things better. And we are raising funds to help Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. We are at $51,215. Just fantastic. So please keep that up. We still have a wonderful program ahead of us. And I am super excited to introduce the next Star Trek actress. She is one of my favorite characters in all of the Star Trek series. She's known for her roles in Star Trek Picard, Blind Spot. Michelle Hurd has had a long and distinguished acting career. Many other appearances on other shows. Shows, sadly, I don't watch, like Law and Order, SVU, Hawaii Five-0, but maybe I will sometime. But in Star Trek, she plays a character that grapples with issues of addiction, sexuality, loss, loneliness. I don't want to be pessimistic, but it's sad that we are in a time where such issues of importance are still so relevant. Star Trek has been a model to address these over the decades that Star Trek has been running the series. Now, she also plays an undercover agent in an alien outpost, and she's trying to be in character of a junkie in this, weird dystopic town. I wish she could be an undercover agent in the Trump campaign, which we know is composed of aggressive and destructive aliens. Please welcome Michelle to the call.
That was great, John. And boy, oh boy, I would love to see Rafi infiltrate the Trump campaign, especially since Michelle Hurd is a native New Yorker. And as any native New Yorker will tell you, we have a history with the Trump family and we know them, and they are not trustworthy. And it's time for us to move forward and not move backwards. We have already seen what that is, and we need to look to the future. I have to say thank you so much for that introduction and talking about Rafi, because one of the things that's so glorious about being part of the Star Trek universe is to meet all these people that come to the cons and talk about their struggle, because they saw Rafi's struggle. And you're absolutely right. It is still, very prevalent. Addicts have been here since the beginning of time, and they'll be here till the end of time. They're part of our society, and we need to welcome them in. And I can only think of one duo who is going to be gentle and compassionate and sympathetic, and that is our Harris Walls campaign. First of all, I'd also like to say that I'm geeking out because they're real scientists and astronauts, and all of you guys are so incredibly smart, and I just act smart on TV. So I'm super, super giddy about being here. I'm also an incredibly proud biracial woman. I want to say that loud because apparently there's been a confusion to some people of what biracial means. And it's 2024. It's time to accept us. We're here. I love that I get to look at Harris and see myself reflected in this world. Anyone who's biracial will tell you that it's society that forces you to put you in a category, put you in one side or the other. But the truth is, I am part of my mother and my father, and I will not deny either. Yay, that's there, Harris is going to be there to amplify that. I was also thinking about, first of all, there were so many things that were said that I just was so amazing. I kept writing things down. I wanted to refer back to everything you guys said. Also, Ross, thank you so much for matching 500. I mean, you're glorious. But I too was a Trekkie. My family grew up watching this, and there's something quite interesting about what's happening with having Kamala running Madam Vice President to become possibly the first female president in this country. When we were younger, my father knew that his 3 brown girls needed to see themselves represented in this world. So we would watch reruns of Star Trek, and we saw Uhura on that bridge. And it wasn't just a Black woman on that bridge. It was a woman who had a voice, who had confidence and strength and beauty and purpose. And I believe that Nichelle Nichols, whether it was conscious or unconscious, gave me and my sisters permission to be bold and to be brave and to be here and to use our voices to amplify our needs and our voices, and the fact that we're here and we're supposed to be part of this community. And when Obama was voted president, I remember turning to my sister who has 2 brown boys, and I said, Adrian, remember when we grew up in the classrooms, there was all those pictures of old white men who were presidents. And that's what we saw. It was at the top of the classroom, which is almost, it's almost a little insidious because it meant like that's literally the ceiling that you're going to hit. You can't go beyond that. And I said, Adrian, now our boys are going to see a Black man up there that breaks the ceiling. And all of a sudden, while listening in here, I realized Kamala Harris is our Uhura. She's our modern day Uhura. There are young girls, brown, Black, multi-ethnic, who are now going to see Uhura in the White House and realize we can all do anything, that our dreams are possible. Oh, I always get emotional when I think about these things, but it's incredibly important. And the fact that it's time, past time, that we have a woman in that office. And it's so important right now because our rights as women are being stripped away. Handmaid's Tale is not just a book and a movie and TV series. This is a possibility that we are barreling down right now. And we all have to stay vigilant and stay awake and see what's happening. So I want to say to all my Trekkie brothers and sisters out there, please register to vote. Make sure all of our young people who are going to college, who may not realize that they need to register, so that while they're in college, they'll mail those absentee ballots in. Vote, tell 2 friends, stay awake. We are behind the 8 ball. We're not, just because we have this energy doesn't mean that we have this thing sold. We need to show up, and we need to show up in strong numbers so that we can silence the crazy chatter that will come, because we already hear it. It's already happening. There's already crazy chatter happening. There's not going to be any stolen election. It's going to be a clear win. And donate, 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 donate. As they just said, it's not just for our main ticket. It's for that up and down, because we have to help our new president, our first female president, and a phenomenal vice president get things done. And that means we need to make sure that we have the House, we have all the downvotes. And it's not just that. It's literally doing your research and realizing who is representing your state. Are they actually looking after your needs and what is good for you? Do you go to a public school? Do you, your health insurance? Do you have, a way to get, transportation, infrastructure? These are things that those representatives are going to dictate. So we need up and down, donate, vote, register. Let's claim our place in this world again. And someone else said that, what was so beautiful about watching Walz come in and Harris is that there's joy again. There's joy. And also, just back in the day, we had a Republican and Democrat parties. I don't know what's happened here. That's not the Republican Party. That is literally Trump. You're voting for a man, a narcissist, who doesn't know anyone's needs. I mean, not to be graphic, but he has a gold toilet. How many of us have a gold toilet? I don't got no gold toilet. We want to be with people who understand what it's like to go to the grocery store, to get on the subway, to have to pay your bills. During the strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike, I spoke about how my artists, 160,000 members we have, and 98% of them couldn't make $26,000 a year to get their insurance. Real issues. Someone who lives in a gold tower doesn't know those issues. We need to have representation that represents us and hears us and speaks with a voice that is similar to us. So I thank you guys so much for being included in this amazing webinar. I'm geeking out, as I said. I'm so proud to be here. I'm proud to be a Trekkie. I'm proud to be part of this family. And please, please, please donate, donate, donate. Yay, we got to 50,000. Let's see how far we can go. Register to vote, tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. And let's bring this home, you guys. Let's do it. We got it. It's in our hands. Let's do it. Thank you so much, everyone. Back to you, John.
Michelle, thank you so much. You as Rafi are our modern day Uhura and an inspiration to us all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next guest is a geoscientist, artist, and astronaut, Sian Proctor, who flew on the historic SpaceX Inspiration 4 mission and served as the first ever Black female pilot of a spacecraft. She's a professor of geology at South Mountain Community College, an advocate for diversity in space exploration. And I'll share with you in an email earlier today, she revealed that she might be a little tired after flying halfway around the world to make it back here to be on this call, but that it was so important that it was worth it. Dr. Proctor.
Oh, thank you. And Michelle, thank you. I want to start by saying how it's a real honor to be here among all these amazing individuals and to show our collective support for the Harris-Walz campaign. This is absolutely the most important election of our generation. For the past few years, I have been serving on Vice President Harris's National Space Council Users Advisory Group and supporting national initiatives such as the Space for All campaign. I also just returned from a month-long visit to Africa as the U.S. State Department Science Envoy for the civil use of space. It has been a real honor to serve at this current administration's space initiatives, but I'm also a geoscience professor, and there is no planet better than planet Earth. When we solve for space, we are actually solving for Earth. And Vice President Harris understands the importance of space exploration to the United States, our allies, and humanity as a whole. In 2021, I was selected for the Inspiration 4 mission, which was the first all-civilian mission to orbit. And I was selected because I wrote a poem called Space to Inspire. Now, I wrote this poem during the aftermath of the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matter movement. They had a big impact on what I wanted to express about our future. And I put it in this poem. And I want to share with you the core of that poem right now. You've got space. I've got space. We all have space to inspire. That's why we dream of going higher and higher. But what is space if you can't breathe? Let's stop sucking out the air of our humanity. We have a moment to seize the light, Earth from space, both day and night. We have J for justice, to ignite the bold. We have E for equity, to cut past the old. We have D for diversity, to end the fight. We have I for inclusion, to try to make it right. A Jedi space to rally behind, a universal force so big it binds. Inspiration to change the world, a new beginning for us to hold. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a Star Wars acronym, but its meaning and foundation are rooted from my love of Star Trek. As a kid, I watched all of Star Trek with me and my family, and Nichelle Nichols, Lieutenant Uhura, she is the reason why I am an astronaut today. And you know, together we need to boldly go together with a positive vision for all of humanity. It's our time to actively strive for the Star Trek future of a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space for ourselves, our families, our friends, our community, our beautiful planet Earth, and beyond. We can only get to that future by supporting Harris for president. There are many ways to show your support in shaping our collective future, and it begins with donating and then voting. You have to be an active participant in our future. And together, let's make VP Harris boldly go where no woman has gone before. Thank you for having me, and back to you, John.
Sian, we're very inclusive on this call. We accept Star Wars fans, and may the force be with you. Thank you so much. Our next guest is the designer of our Space Cadets for Harris patch, and also the designer of the most beautiful space shuttle mission patch ever created. In case you're wondering, it's the STS-125 crew patch for the last space shuttle flight to the Hubble Space Telescope, on which I was a crew member and EVA astronaut. I'd like to show it to you. Except NASA legal said I'm not allowed to show it, so you'll have to go on the web and look at it. He is an iconic graphic designer and the lead graphic artist for Star Trek. And so if you think about the displays and controls on the flight deck of the various starships, he is the lead for those visual language and user interfaces. In 1997, I was put in charge of designing the crew controls for the International Space Station. And where did I get my inspiration? From the flight deck of the Enterprise, quite literally. And so if you look at the graphic pages on the International Space Station, they were inspired by the Enterprise. He's co-authored several technical manuals and books related to the Star Trek universe. Please give a warm welcome to Mike Okuda.
I gotta say, as a graphic artist, working on Star Trek is incredibly cool, but the single coolest thing I ever got to do was when you contacted me and asked me to do your mission patch for STS-125. So thank you for that. I grew up in a magical time. As a child, I sat on my parents' living room floor watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon. That moment was burned forever in my memory, and it was science fiction made real. To this kid, it symbolized the promise of tomorrow. It was proof that our nation's ingenuity and determination would empower it to explore the unknown, and in the process, it would improve life for all. It seemed a reflection of my country's core values. Of course, as a lifelong space geek, I was also a big fan of science fiction, which fueled my imagination. And there was something very special about the future as envisioned in the television series Star Trek, created by the late Gene Roddenberry. Even as real-life space explorers, scientists, and engineers were my heroes, Star Trek's fictional characters carried this child's imagination even further. Eventually, my fascination with space landed me a job as a graphic designer on the Star Trek television shows and movies. Through my work, I've witnessed firsthand the power of space exploration to inspire people from all walks of life to imagine a better tomorrow. I think what draws me to Star Trek is its underlying faith in humanity, a faith that Roddenberry clearly shared with America's founders, in the notion that if we are smart, if we are compassionate, and if we work together, that tomorrow can be a better place, that it can be a better place. Now, some have described Star Trek's imagined future as a utopia, but I don't entirely agree. The fact is that many Star Trek stories are allegories, warning about bad things that could happen if we fail to make wise choices. And that's what's at stake today. We are faced with a stark choice between the bright optimism of America's founding principles and those who would replace fairness and democracy with selfish greed, racism, sexism, and exclusion. If we fail to act wisely in this election, tomorrow can be dark indeed. But we all have it in our power to make a real difference. That's why I support Kamala Harris for president. Not only does she bring years of experience in government service as district attorney, as attorney general, as United States Senator, and as vice president of the United States, but Kamala Harris brings something very special to her work, a visible sense of compassion, of joy, and of optimism, the kind of optimism on which America was built, and the kind of optimism that can empower our future. Please join me in supporting Harris for president. Show that support by registering and voting for president and for Democratic candidates down ticket, and by urging others to do the same. And please join me in making a financial contribution to empower the Harris campaign. Tomorrow is literally in your hands. Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much. And of course, thank you for the wonderful artwork. My mission patch gives me great joy, thinking about our interaction and the mission. And thanks for those really important words.
Thank you for including me.
I am just looking for an update on where we are in the fundraising, but I think we have already exceeded our goals, but that doesn't mean we're done yet. We have 81 days until the election, and every day counts, every dollar counts, and we're at $52,868. So thank you very much for those that have already contributed. Please, continue to contribute. Star Trek has been on Star Trek of one franchise or another, following the Gene Roddenberry vision, has been on the air for 57 years. Most of my lifetime, longer than many of you have been alive. So how about $57 to help make this inspiring vision of the future of space a reality by electing Harris and Waltz? Our next guest is very special to me. He is a dear friend and colleague. He is a Nobel Prize winning astrophysicist, recognized for his discovery that not only is the universe expanding, but it's accelerating and it's a huge mystery. And we've given the name dark energy to it, which basically is a physicist's vernacular for we don't know what it is. Before he went to Sweden to accept the award, he said something to a few of us, that astronauts that had worked on the Hubble Space Telescope. He said, no Hubble, no Nobel. He's an astronomy professor at Johns Hopkins University, a senior researcher at Space Telescope Science Institute, where I worked for 2 years. And each year I teach one class in his introductory astronomy class for non-majors to talk about space science and my adventures in space. Please welcome my friend and Professor Adam Riess.
Thank you, John. I'm really excited to be here. John is a longtime friend. I feel so grateful for the number of times he risked his life to go up to the Hubble Space Telescope and repair it so that people like me could use it to study the universe. And I'm also grateful that once a year he will substitute teach my course. And, you know, usually when the substitute teacher comes in, people are like, oh, boo and stuff. But, you know, in my case, it's an astronaut coming in and the students are really excited. As John described, I study and I'm interested in really big questions about the universe. What is the universe made of? How old is the universe? What is its ultimate fate? Is there life elsewhere in the universe? And so I study these things using telescopes that NASA builds and we run at the Space Telescope Science Institute. So I've been using the Hubble Space Telescope for about 20 years for my work. And currently I'm using the new James Webb Space Telescope, which you may have heard about. Is just an absolutely jaw-dropping, fantastic telescope. Really probably the most incredible scientific instrument ever built by humans. It is just, it's miraculous. It's a pleasure to use. I hope you get to look at pictures from it online. But of course, I use it to study these questions. Now, normally when I talk to an audience about these giant questions, you know, about the universe, they're curious and intensely interested and fascinated. And so this is a very different experience talking to people from Star Trek because, you know, you've been to the future. And so you probably actually have all the answers to the questions that I would like. So, you know, maybe after this call, you know, you guys could fill me in. But, you know, since you're from the future and I'm stuck here in the present, you know, we have to keep working the hard way and do the math and do the science and use the telescopes and determine these things. So the United States has always, or for the last century, has led the world in science, in basic science research. Some of it's to answer our curiosity. Many people want to understand the universe. Some of it leads to the development of technology. Space technology can be incredibly important. I think space is also kind of a gateway drug for STEM, for people who become interested in math and science through the study of space. So I just feel very grateful to be a part of that. Now, in the work that I do, facts are very important. Everything we do is based on comprehending facts, learning facts, sharing facts. That's the scientific method. And as many of you know, we've entered some sort of strange periods of time where what are facts, what is reality is now a subject of great debate. People actually sometimes suggest now the Earth is flat or we did not actually land on the moon and things like that, which, you know, to me, when I was a kid was just utterly unthinkable. But, you know, as I teach my students in my introductory class, the Romans and the Greeks understood a great deal about space. They had figured out that the Earth was curved. They had figured out the size of the Earth, the size of the sun and the moon, and the distances. They understood the solar system. That knowledge was lost in the Dark Ages, literally lost. And so just because we know things, just because we have great science and we can learn facts and share them, it doesn't mean we will have it forever or that we always will. Regrettably, particularly when you have a populist leader who is used to telling people what the facts are instead of them being self-evident through study, through knowledge, it's pretty scary. So I really appreciate the current administration and Vice President Harris her passion and love of science, her leadership in space through the Space Council. I know that she will be a very strong supporter of facts, of basic research, of curiosity, of knowledge, of science. So I just am very pleased to support her. And I hope the rest of you listening to this do as well. Thank you. Back to you, John.
Adam, thank you so much. I know you have a very busy research schedule. You're using the James Webb Space Telescope. You're trying to push back our measurements of the rate of expansion of the universe even further back. But in your spare time, if you could solve a couple of simple mysteries, one of which is, how do we get to warp drive? And the second is what I think is right now the most mysterious question in all the universe. Why is Donald Trump so popular?
I don't know.
Our next...
We'll work on it.
Thanks, Adam. Our next out of this world guest is astronaut and educator Barbara Morgan. She has had an incredible ride. She was the backup astronaut for Krista McAuliffe in the Teacher for Space program. Of course, Krista McAuliffe, who perished in the tragic Challenger disaster. Barbara, came back from that awful experience, persevered, and in 1998 was selected into the 17th group of astronauts. I shared the office with her. I was an astronaut during that period. She flew on STS-118 in 2007, 2 years before my last mission. It was an ISS assembly mission. Much like our Vice President, Camille Harris, Barbara is an advocate that space is for everyone. I couldn't agree more. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate this opportunity to join you all tonight. And hello, fellow Earthlings. So I'd like to start really by sharing a little space story. When my crewmates and I reached orbit, I had a couple huge surprises when I floated over and looked out the window for the first time. My first big surprise was the blackness of space. Now, I'd seen hundreds and hundreds of photographs that our fellow astronauts have taken from space, and they're all gorgeous. They didn't capture what my eyes saw when I saw that blackness of space for the first time. And it's a black that I'd never seen anywhere on Earth. So it's really hard to describe, but I'm going to do it very quickly by just telling you it's a black, like I said, that I've never seen any place on Earth. It's a flat black, but it's not like flat black paint because you can see through it. It's a vacuum, and it seemed to have some kind of really smooth texture to it. So I like to call it a creamy black, but it's nothing like creamy black coffee. Because it is absolutely pitch black. So the second big surprise was as John knows, when you're orbiting the Earth in your space shuttle or in your International Space Station, you're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. So your orbit takes you 90 minutes, an hour and a half. So you get 45 minutes a day, 45 minutes a night, 45 minutes a day, 45 minutes at night. And the huge surprise was when you were on the daytime side of the planet, like you are in this beautiful photograph I have behind me. Here, from our perspective here on Earth, we look up during the day and it's lots of blue or white or gray or some kind of combination, right? And it looks like it goes on forever. When you're on the daytime side of the planet in space, it is absolutely that pitch black all the way to the edge of the planet, pitch black. And you can see in this picture here that all that blue that we look at, that we take for granted, it's a really thin line. And I want to say it's so small, it's like the skin of an apple on an apple. And you start thinking about all the people and all the plants and all the other animals that are sharing this planet together, and those finite, really incredibly finite resources that we have. So that's one of the many reasons I feel that space is so important to our nation and our world. So from my perspective as an astronaut and a teacher, I think space is also critically important to our nation because space and education absolutely go hand in hand. NASA and our commercial partners are able to do the great work they do because our NASA and our commercial partners' workforce is well educated. And space is curiosity, it's awe, it's wonder, it is lifelong learning for all of us. Space inspires curiosity and wonder in our young people. And curiosity and wonder, those are great motivators for our students. So one of the many reasons I am supporting Camille Harris and Tim Waltz is that they know the importance of education for all of our students. And they understand that public education, I'm going to say that again, public education is the cornerstone of our democracy. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Barbara. I completely agree. I went, entirely from kindergarten through high school in the public schools. And I feel so privileged that I had such wonderful teachers like you, Barbara. And I really enjoyed being an astronaut with you as an astronaut in the office. We had a great run with the space shuttle, and I look forward to an amazing future as we continue the International Space Station and move on to exploring Mars and beyond.
Hear, hear.
We are at $57,000 contributed during this call, which is, exceeding my expectations. We have two wonderful speakers left. Let's see if we can get to 60,000 in the remaining few minutes. I would really appreciate it. And I know that the Harris Waltz campaign would too. Lauren Lyons is an aerospace engineer, executive, science communicator, and space startup advisory with experience at Blue Origin, SpaceX, Firefly Aerospace, JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, and is one of the extraordinary volunteers who helped put this call together. We couldn't have done it without you, Lauren. Over to you.
Thank you so much, John. I am so excited to be here. Okay, so I'm going to start with a story. I grew up in Compton, California, and sadly, I did not have great public schools. And so in 10th grade, I got a scholarship to go on full scholarship to this amazing all-girls school across town. So I would take this school bus from Compton to Brentwood, sometimes taking 2 hours each way each day. And that made doing after-school projects a bit tough. But there was this one club that I felt was probably worth the pain. And that was our school's robotics team. Now, it wasn't because of the robots, because I literally had no idea what an engineer was. I never met one. No one in my family had ever been to college. I didn't know what any of this was. The reason I signed up was that the national championships were held at Walt Disney World, and I loved the mouse. So I signed up. And we were also lucky that because we were in the LA area, we got to have mentors coming in to help us build our robot that came from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. These are the people who worked on the Deep Space Network, who built the rovers that were on Mars and other satellites. And this is where I learned for the first time what an engineer was. And I learned that engineers were the people, the humans who built the rovers on Mars, the satellites in the sky that I learned about on TV. And it was through seeing these people that I learned that I could become one of them. So after 2 years of doing robotics and going to Epcot for the championship, eventually I decided that I liked, robots for the robots, not because of Disney so much anymore. But I got so excited about engineering because I had the opportunities to pursue it that I ended up becoming the first person in my family to go to college. And I went on to study aerospace engineering and robotics at Princeton. After leaving Princeton, I went to the space industry and I got to work on Mars rovers myself. I got to work on rockets, on crewed spaceships, on satellite internet, on lunar landers, on space stations, and all these things. I had the time of my life. But to this day, I can count on one hand the number of times that I worked alongside people who looked like me. We are the people that are building the technology that keeps our devices connected to space, to GPS, the spacecraft that are going to build the foundations of humans going back to the moon, of humans going to Mars. But the people who are creating that future, people like me, who come from places like me, are oftentimes not even at the table. And so for me, my passion for space began to morph more than just being about the cool robots. So let's go back to that time in college. I took this course. It was a space science course where we started looking at planetary science, and I learned about Jupiter. And I learned about a particular moon on Jupiter called Europa. Now, if you don't know about Europa, I'm like the biggest fan, by the way. Europa has a global liquid subsurface ocean, and subsurface meaning the surface is liquid, or sorry, water ice, frozen water ice. Now, on Earth, wherever we find water, we find life. And if that is true outside of Earth, can you imagine that in our own solar system, there might be life? The implications of that are massive. If we find life off Earth, we have to ask an existential question, which is, where do we come from? And that question belongs to everybody. That's all of us. And on Earth, we tend to sort of slice and dice ourselves and categorize ourselves into groups to make our world seem smaller. But in space, it's the opposite. Those boundaries and those barriers, they don't exist. They don't apply to space. But look at the beauty of this panel, right? Look at the diversity we've had here across age and gender, skin color, industry. This is a microcosm of that Starfleet future that so many of us dream of. But in order for that reality to come into fruition, this reality of not having these same barriers and borders that we have on Earth, we have to actually build that. And it's not going to happen naturally. Those forces that created those barriers, that created race, that created inequality, that can create inequity, those forces are still at play and run the risk of being the foundation of our future in space. And we can't have that. We want to build something else. We want to build that Star Trek future of abundance and wonder and inclusion. We don't want Elysium, great movie, but we don't want that, where we have the extremes of the haves and the have-nots, the scarcity where only certain people get to go to space. Space belongs to all of us. And that's what I love about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They embody that. They just like represent it so naturally. They don't even have to try. You have this woman who's a daughter of immigrants. She's got this Jamaican descent. She's got this Indian descent. She is a devoted stepmama, joyful vice president, joyful, like smiles, laughs like a human being, dares to do that. And dare I say, soon to be president. And we have a vice presidential candidate, also joyful, former soldier, teacher, progressive Midwesterner. Neither of these two you can put in a simple little box. You can't. And the people keep trying. They keep trying to come up with ways to sort of give them some extreme title, and you can't. They, to me, embody just in their very existence that diversity of our country, that diversity of our planet, that diversity of the world we want to build in space. And that inclusivity that's endemic to this campaign. They don't fake it. They just live it because it's them. So I know I want to live in a world where everybody has a seat at the table, where everybody has a voice, where our future in space is being built by everyone, not just the most wealthy, not just the people who are friends of whoever's in power. I want people that look like me, that look like you, that look like all of us at the table, making decisions about what humanity's future in space is going to be like. And because of that, voting for Harris and Walz.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We are two dedicated Star Trek fans or space fans who could donate $1,701 away from putting us over $60,000. Or a lot of you putting in $17.01 for NCC 1701. We conclude our speaker list, and I have to say we may have saved the best for last. Emily Calandrelli is a fellow MIT alum, is an engineer and TV host widely recognized as the Space Gal. She's host of Emily's Wonder Lab on Netflix. She is an advocate for STEM education, particularly for young girls, and has authored several children's books on space and science, including her latest Ada Lace series becoming a New York Times bestseller. Of course, for me, she is best known as one of my daughter's favorite media stars. Take us home, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that we're at the end of this today, and we've already heard from just the most iconic space people in our industry, so I will be brief. My name is Emily Calandrelli. I'm the Space Gal on social media. I'm an MIT aerospace engineer, mom of two, host of Emily's Wonder Lab on Netflix. I'll be flying to space with Blue Origin sometime soon. Or you may know me as that girl who finds out what state a commenter who left a forced birth comment on my page is from, and then donates to the abortion funds in their state in their honor. It's one of my fonder achievements. First, I just want to thank everybody who is here, who is tuning in, who is speaking, who is donating. I know that for some, doing something like this, putting your politics out there, can feel quite brave. You're really putting yourself out there. I know that personally, when I do this, when I speak about this on my page, I inevitably get the comment, stick to space. Stay out of politics. This is so annoying. Stick to space, they said, as Roe v. Wade got overturned. You're a children's TV show host, for God's sake. Stick to space, they said, as he systematically stripped away LGBTQ protections. Stick to space, they said, as our country continues to see the highest number of school shootings in the world. Stick to space, they said, as he incited an insurrection. Stick to space, they said, as they work to take away IVF and limit birth control. Stick to space. No. That would make it quite easy for them, wouldn't it? As Jerry Ryan said earlier, we got to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. These are the reasons that I support a Harris presidency. Everything that he has worked to take away, she will fight to protect, including democracy itself. Like most of us here, I'm a huge advocate for space exploration, both human and robotic. And luckily, support for space exploration and funding for NASA is, for the most part, bipartisan. So whether or not we will explore is not really my concern for this election, but who will be doing the exploring is. What systems are we putting in place to ensure that we are recruiting the most diverse set of innovators? Space exploration is about pushing the envelope. It's about solving the hardest technical challenges and identifying the most innovative solutions. To do that, you need people with all sorts of different backgrounds at the table, behind the computer, and in the lab. By relegating women to baby making and removing protections for our most vulnerable populations, who are we left with? You may already know this. I was actually surprised to learn this, but the aerospace industry is experiencing a huge recruitment problem right now. They're actually having a hard time inspiring Gen Z to pursue space exploration. And I promise you, because space exploration is so closely tied to government, a Trump presidency will make this challenge even harder. And to be clear, I want a Harris presidency about as much as I don't want to see another Trump presidency, for many reasons, not the least of which is, Lord knows, Trump will take sole credit for landing our first woman on the moon, something that has been in the works for many years now. Because for the first time ever, women will choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because they should have been there 55 years ago. It will be the first time, in fact, that Trump would respect a woman's right to choose. And when that milestone happens, when I am sitting with my daughter, watching a woman step foot on the lunar surface for the first time in history, it just feels right to have a woman in the Oval Office overseeing this historic first. I want a Harris presidency for myself, for my children, especially my daughter, for the aerospace industry, and for the future of this country. Thank you. Back to you, John.
Wow, that was so inspiring. Although I thought you were going in a slightly different direction when you were talking about who will explore, because I think Donald Trump will take credit for the Chinese landing on the moon before the US lands a woman on the moon, if he becomes president. All right. Where are we on donations? Because I just have a few closing comments. We're at 57,688. So I'm just going to keep talking until we get to 60,000. No, not true. But if you can open your wallets one last time and push us over the 60,000, that would be really, really gratifying. I've been, incredibly inspired by all of our speakers. Scientifically, and Lauren, I actually study Europa with the Hubble Space Telescope. That's my scientific research program. But I am inspired by the wonder and awe that science gives us from illuminating our world and our universe. I'm also incredibly inspired by the amazing freedoms we have in this country, the freedoms to decide what scientific discipline we want to pursue. As Adam Riess said, that we use facts to make decisions. And yes, when science finds out that a fact isn't true, we make that, we say, hey, turned out not to be true. We correct it. We incorporate that into our ideas, our decision-making going forward. We need to protect those rights and freedoms. They're not free. It comes at a cost. That cost is voting. It's putting up candidates who are honest and who believe in these rights and freedoms. On science and space exploration, I take a lot of inspiration and guidance from a document that was produced by a team in 1945 in response to a question that Roosevelt asked around the time of the end of World War II. He was impressed by how science helped us win World War II, or at least close to winning World War II. Remember, World War II was a war against, a populist autocrat trying to take over the world, quite honestly. And in 1945, Vannevar Bush delivered his report to Truman in a document called Science, the Endless Frontier. And in the opening paragraphs, he wrote that science can be effective in the national welfare only as a member of a team, whether the conditions be peace or war. But without scientific progress, no amount of achievement in other directions can ensure our health, prosperity, and security as a nation in the modern world. That's why I am so dedicated to science in our country, to leading scientific efforts and making sure that we have scientific integrity. And I know that only the Harris-Waltz team will respect that scientific integrity, because we've seen that before in a previous administration where that has not been respected. I want to close by thanking all of the participants, all of the people online, our great inspirational leaders, and all of you who have contributed. And most of all, I want to thank all of the folks behind the scenes that helped make this happen, because it wasn't magic. It was an incredible amount of hard work over really just about 3 days. So in closing, I'd like to say, let's support Kamala Harris to boldly go where no woman has gone before and win the presidency of the United States. For all of you online, may you live long and prosper.